All right, Corey Anderson here, and today is Monday, October 4th, 1:23 a.m. in the morning, and it's time for the most important part of our day. We had a really good day today, very productive day at work, and now, like I said, it's the most important work now, which is working on ourselves, becoming a better version of ourselves. And this week is the start of part 3 of the Master Key System. So to recap, what have we gone over so far? And I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of my experiences from doing these practices and working this program ever since I started with the Master Key System. Again, I've gone through 30 minutes a day, 6 days out of the week. That's and for the last 2 weeks, that's 6 hours total that I've done just meditations and becoming more conscious as an individual. And as I go out into the world, I feel more present, I feel more conscious, and I feel a lot better just mentally, because now I'm able to focus and discern things a lot easier as compared to before. I would be more into my thoughts, and now I'm more into the moment and less into what I'm thinking all the time. But a recap, what have we gone over? Now it is, the end of the weekend, and where I'm at in my neighborhood, you could probably hear the music in the background. And, stay focused, Corey. This is a perfect opportunity to show the process of what you have been learning, because this program teaches us that no matter what's going on the outside, we'll be able to develop the ability to focus on the task and on the goal, and to achieve that goal regardless of any type of distraction. And we've gone over, what have we gone over so far? That there's one universal mind, that there's one infinite intelligence that permeates all space and manifests in all living things and flows through all material things. This power we know as the spirit of the universe. It's the source. It's, there's no such thing as empty space. The space between me and the camera, or even this laptop that I'm recording this on, it's filled with the living presence. And we know this presence as the power of the universe. It's the God force. It's consciousness. And this force is conscious, and it thinks, and it's aware of everything, and it's all power. It's everywhere and everything, and all power comes from it, all wisdom comes from it, all knowledge and intelligence comes from it. And we have this power within us, and we could manifest through us any type of characteristic that we desire. That is the power we have been given as human beings. Part 2, what we've gone over in part 2 are the 2 phases of mind. There's the conscious mind, which is the surface mind, and has been given the name as the watchman at the gate, because the responsibility of the conscious mind is to discern, it's to reason, it's to make choices, and to protect and guard the realm of the subconscious, because our subconscious is the seat of habit, and it's open to suggestions from the external world and what other people say, or even the circumstances of what you go through. We determine with our conscious mind how an external circumstance is to affect us, and by that observation and what we think about a situation and the emotions that we have about any given situation or circumstance that we are in is going to determine how our subconscious mind acts and responds in that given situation. So again, the power of the subconscious mind is the universal power that exists within us. It's responsible for making our hair grow. It's responsible for the renewing of our cells. It's responsible for making our fingernails grow. It's responsible for making our heart beat. We don't have to do that. We don't have to think about it. It's something that happens on its own, and it's all that process, the vital functions of our physical life, is under a permanent and dependable power that exists within us. Again, that power is the subconscious mind, and we have the power through our consciousness, through the surface mind, which thinks, reasons, builds mental pictures to direct that power in any given direction. And again, me personally, we're using this information and applying these principles towards our specific purpose in life, which ultimately leads back to the Word of God and what all the prophets have foretold of the end times and what we are going through today, because we are in Revelations today. And we'll save all that for another video. And yeah, let's get started with part 3. So introduction, because we still have a lot of growing to do, a lot of practicing to do, and every day we'll just keep moving forward and documenting our progress. All right. So part 3, you have found that the individual may act on the universal, and the result of this action and interaction is cause and effect. Thought, therefore, is the cause, and the experiences with which you meet in life are the effect. Eliminate, therefore, any possible tendency to complain of conditions as they have been or as they are, because it rests with you to change them and make them what you would like them to be. Direct your effort to a realization of the mental resources always at your command, from which all real and lasting power comes. Persist in this practice, until you come to a realization of the fact that there can be no failure in the accomplishment of any proper object in life. Now's not the time to have hiccups, Corey. If you but understand your power, okay, let's reread that again so we have a flow. Persist in this practice until you come to a realization of the fact that there can be no failure in the accomplishment of any proper object in life, if you but understand your power and persist in your object, because the mind forces are ever ready to lend themselves to a purposeful will, in the effort to crystallize thought and desire into actions, events, and conditions. Whereas in the beginning of each function of life and each action is the result of conscious thought, the habitual actions become automatic, and the thought that controls them passes into the realm of the subconscious, yet it is just as intelligent as before. It is necessary that it become automatic or subconscious in order that the self-conscious mind, or the surface mind, may attend to other things. The new actions will, however, in their turn become habitual, then automatic, then subconscious, in order that the mind again may be freed from this detail and advance to still other activities. When you realize this, you will have found a source of power which will enable you to take care of any situation in life which may develop. So, starting the full part of 3, that was the introduction. The necessary interaction of the conscious and subconscious mind requires a similar interaction between the corresponding systems of nerves. Judge Troward indicates the very beautiful method in which this interaction is effected. He says, quote, "The cerebrospinal system is the organ of the conscious mind, and the sympathetic is the organ of the subconscious. The cerebrospinal is the channel through which we receive conscious perception from the physical senses and exercise control over the movements of the body. This system of nerves has its center in the brain. The sympathetic system has its center in a ganglionic mass at the back of the stomach, known as the solar plexus, and is the channel of that mental action which unconsciously supports the vital functions of the body. The connection between the two systems is made by the vagus nerve, which passes out of the cerebral region as a portion of the voluntary system to the thorax, sending out branches to the heart and lungs, and finally passes through the diaphragm. It loses its outer coating and becomes identified with the nerves of the sympathetic system, so forming a connecting link between the two and making man physically a single entity. End quote. Now that explains why they say breathing, when you want to really bring the conscious and subconscious into harmony with itself, we have to focus on our breathing. Because what's it saying? What is he saying? It's saying the connection between the conscious mind, the surface mind, and the subconscious is to the heart and lungs, and finally passing through the diaphragm. It loses its outer coating and becomes identified with the nerves of the sympathetic system. So the connection between the subconscious, which has its center in the ganglionic mass at the back of the stomach, which is the solar plexus. So the solar plexus is the center of our subconscious mind. And from the solar plexus is radiating life, energy, and force. Our conscious mind, which is the brain and central nervous system, the cerebral spinal, okay? The solar plexus, the subconscious, and the cerebral spinal connect at the heart and at the lungs and through the diaphragm. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. It's good, Corey. It's good. Remember, less perfection, more authenticity. And as you get through this and you learn it, and you really learn it, and you really understand it, you'll be able to truly help other people. There's so many people that you could be able to help, that you'll be able to help. I mean, who else is up at 1:35 a.m. in the morning doing this? Not many people. So we have seen that every thought is received by the brain, which is the organ of the conscious. It is here subjected to our power of reasoning. When the objective mind has been satisfied that the thought is true, it is sent to the solar plexus, or the brain of the subjective mind, to be made into our flesh, to be brought forth into the world as reality. It is then no longer susceptible to any argument whatever. The subconscious mind cannot argue, it only acts. It accepts the conclusions of the objective mind as final. So he says that thought itself is not a product of the brain, but is received by the brain. Which makes sense, because in the Science of Being Great, Wallace D. Wattles explains too that the brain being an instrument of the mind, okay, thought happens in the mind, and the brain is nothing but an instrument. Because as he says, once a person dies and their soul, their spirit passes from their physical body, everything that's a part of the physical body is no longer in function because the spirit has left the body. And we know the brain is part of the physical body. So how could thought, if thought is a spiritual thing, thought is an intangible thing. The brain is nothing but a receiver of the thought. And as he's saying, thought is subjected to our power of reasoning. And when the surface mind, when the watchman at the gate of the gate is satisfied that what it's receiving is true, that the thought it's receiving is true, or thinking is true, it is then sent to the solar plexus, or the subjective mind. And the subjective mind then goes on to create that in our physical body. And we begin to act that, it becomes our character. The solar plexus has been likened to the sun of the body because it is the central point of distribution for the energy which the body is constantly generating. This energy is a very real energy, and this sun is a very real sun, and the energy is being distributed by very real nerves to all parts of the body, and is thrown off in an atmosphere which envelops the body. Now there he's talking about the aura, because we all have an aura. It Remember, we're made out of atoms, and atoms are made out of protons, neutrons, and electrons. And the protons and neutrons exist inside the nucleus of the atom, and the proton itself has a positive electric charge. And the electron, which is a negative electric charge, gets attracted to the proton. And it's the action and interaction of the proton and the electron which creates the electromagnetic field. That's what creates our aura. And our thoughts and emotions determine the vibratory state of what our electromagnetic field is in. If this radiation is sufficiently strong, the person is called magnetic. He is said to be filled with personal magnetism. Such a person may wield an immense power for good. Remember, we are here to use our powers for good. His presence alone will often bring comfort to the troubled minds with which he comes in contact. When the solar plexus is in active operation and is radiating life, energy, and vitality to every part of the body and to everyone whom he meets, the sensations are pleasant. The body is filled with health, and all with whom he comes in contact experience a pleasant sensation. If there is any interruption of this radiation, the sensations are unpleasant. The flow of life and energy to some part of the body is stopped, and this is the cause of every ill to the human race, physical, mental, or environmental. So as even the process of our conscious mind and our ability to perceive properly and filter properly the external world depends upon the functionings of the subconscious mind, because if the subconscious mind is the source of our physical life and is also the source of our mental life, if there's any radiation or interruption of the flow of our subconscious, of course it's going to affect our conscious mind. It's going to affect our thought processes. And any type of ill thought produces an ill action. And that ill action will have a ill response on the environment. This is why positive thinking is so important and the power of positive thought. But it all leads back to the protection of the subconscious mind and the proper function of the subconscious. Physical, because the sun of the body is no longer generating sufficient energy. Okay, going back to the flow of the subconscious mind, if it is interrupted, an interruption of the subconscious mind produces a bad flow of energy in the physical body. And the reason is it's physical because the sun of the body is no longer generating sufficient energy to vitalize some part of the body. Mental, because the conscious mind is dependent upon the subconscious for the vitality necessary to support its thought. And environmental, because the connection between the subconscious and the universal mind is being interrupted. The solar plexus is the point at which the part meets with the whole, where the finite becomes infinite, where the uncreate becomes create. The universal becomes individualized. The invisible becomes visible. It is the point at which life appears, and there is no limit to the amount of life an individual may generate from this solar center. This center of energy is omnipotent because it is the point of contact with all life and all intelligence. It can therefore accomplish whatever it is directed to accomplish. And herein lies the power of the conscious mind. The subconscious can and will carry out such plans and ideas as may be suggested to it by the conscious mind. Now that is a key statement of what we need to remember from this chapter. Of course, we need to remember, or at least learn, the specific teaching of what this part is teaching us is that the subconscious can, which is the universal mind within us and has the power to achieve whatever we give it to achieve. Because it can and will carry out such plans and ideas that it may be suggested to it by the conscious mind. And conscious thought, then, is master of this sun's center, from which the life and energy of the entire body flows. And the quality of the thought which we entertain determines the quality of the thought which the sun will radiate. And the character of the thought which our conscious mind entertains will determine the character of the thought which the sun will radiate. And the nature of the thought which our conscious mind entertains will determine the nature of thought which the sun will radiate, and consequently will determine the nature of the experience which will result. Now that is why growing the conscious mind and really training ourselves to think and formulate the mental pictures that we desire to formulate and direct, so we could direct our mind, our conscious thought, towards the things that we desire. Because why? Because the subconscious mind will take up those thoughts, those ideas, those mental pictures, and it will begin to act on those ideas. It will begin to move in the direction of that which we are thinking. It is evident, therefore, that all we have to do is let our light shine. The more energy we can radiate, the more rapidly shall we be enabled to transmute undesirable conditions into sources of pleasure and profit. The important question then is how to let this light shine, how to generate this energy. Non-resistant thought expands the solar plexus. Resistant thought contracts it. Pleasant thought expands it. Unpleasant thought contracts it. Thoughts of courage, power, confidence, and hope all produce a corresponding state. But the one arch enemy of the solar plexus, which must be absolutely destroyed before there is any possibility of letting any light shine, is fear. Okay, so fear is the enemy. Fear is what we need to destroy. And we can destroy this enemy by letting our energy, by letting the light that exists within us shine. This enemy must be completely destroyed. He must be eliminated. He must be expelled forever. He is the cloud which hides the sun, which causes a perpetual gloom. And that makes sense, because fear is the reason most people don't go out and do the things that they desire to do. Fear is the reason most people don't act on the thoughts that they want to act upon. Of course, there's a morality involved. You don't want to do anything that's immoral. But when you have dreams and you have... Okay, this says your dreams have nothing to do with immorality. At least mine don't anyway. But you have a dream. You have a dream of wanting to help people, changing people's lives for the better, and saving people's souls from the grasp of the enemy. You need to be strong and courageous to overcome the fear, because you put yourself out there and people aren't doing that for themselves. They're going to slander you. They're going to say things about you. They're going to attack you in the realm of spirit. Which is why it's so much more important for you to train yourself to overcome that fear, to overcome the enemy, and to let your light shine. And we've talked about the armor of God already, the armor of light, because the enemy cannot touch us, because God promises through the Word of God that He'll place us on top of a mountaintop where the enemy cannot touch us, because we are protected by God and His angels. Continuing. It is this personal devil, now remember he's talking about fear, which makes men fear the past, the present, and the future. Fear themselves, their friends, and their enemies. Fear everything and everybody. When fear is effectually and completely destroyed, your light will shine. The clouds will disperse, and you will have found the source of power, energy, and life. Now, what is fear? Fear is a state of mind. Okay, and if we're in that fearful state, our thoughts will be operating from a lower state of vibration. Will be operating from a negative state, and we need to overcome that negative state internally and condition ourselves to live internally in a positive state. Remember, as within, so without. He's even saying it here. The inner world is what influences and creates the external world. So when we're at peace internally, and calm internally, in working, vibrating at a higher state internally, we'll be able to work more constructively and do higher things, better things, more constructive things, because we'll overcome that state of fear. When you find that you are really one with the infinite power, and when you can consciously realize this power by a practical demonstration of your ability to overcome any adverse condition by the power of your thought, you will have nothing to fear. Fear will have been destroyed, and you will have come into possession of your birthright as a light of the world, a light in the world, because we are the seven. Remember, the seven, we're Christian soldiers. We're soldiers of God. And fear is of the devil. Fear is the enemy. Because anybody that makes you try to fear is not of God. Remember, God is love. It is our attitude of mind towards life which determines the experiences with which we are to meet. If we expect nothing, we shall have nothing. If we demand much, we shall receive the greater portion. The world is harsh. No yawning. You say that for later. The world is harsh only as we fail to assert ourselves. The criticism of the world is bitter only to those who cannot compel room for their ideas. It is fear of this criticism that causes many ideas to fail to see the light of day. But the man who knows that he has a solar plexus will not fear criticism or anything else. He will be too busy radiating courage, confidence, and power. He will anticipate success by his mental attitude. He will pound barriers to pieces and leap over the chasm of doubt and hesitation which fear places in his path. A knowledge of our ability to consciously radiate health, strength, and harmony will bring us into a realization that there is nothing to fear because we are in touch with infinite strength. Come on, did this thing freeze on me?